back tonight. You gotta. By the way, Brother Gary, you had to step out last week, didn't you? You missed hearing me sing a special. And now, I didn't get a standing ovation or anything like that. But my whole family was here. Maybe the last time, who knows, that we're all together at one place at one time. And they made me get up here and sing with them. So I sang kind of quiet because I was really nervous that he was going to turn up the volume on my mic back there. And the only reason he didn't, because he never thought about it till I just mentioned it, or he would have. Yeah, it's all the picture. I thought he's looking pretty good now on that. So our prayers are that he can have healing and recovery and have a decent life. He's been sick for a long time. Now tonight, back to tonight, Brother Danny Jones is going to be here, and he's got some real treasures with him. If they knew it, there'd be an Egyptian guard in our driveway. He has 2 rings, personal rings of King Tut. Okay? And you say, how in the world could anybody just walk in with 2 rings out of King Tut's tomb when the Egyptian army was looking for them? Well, he'll tell the story about how he got them. They have been verified by experts that these are, in fact, King Tut's rings. Now, when King Tut died, he was buried in Egypt. And I was in his tomb in 1988. In October, I got a trip to Israel, and that was the first time I got to go. And a family from Illinois paid my way over there. Y'all go too if they'd pay your way, wouldn't you? But anyway, they paid my way, and we went to Egypt. We went down to southern Egypt and got to go in King Tut's tomb. I didn't know this till later, but they said that people go in King Tut's tomb, all kinds of strange things happen to them. I'm not superstitious anyway, so it wouldn't have bothered me. But anyway, I was in King Tut's tomb, but he wasn't there. He was in Dallas on display. Y'all got to see him over here, and I was over there. But anyway, I've been in his tomb, and when those pharaohs die, they fill that thing up with all kinds of treasures. But when it's his ring that came off his fingers, then that makes them a lot more valuable than just happened to have been in his tomb. And so anyway, he'll tell the story, how he's ended up with them. But he also has another ring that it's like it popped up, and you better grab it because it's not going to last but seconds. A ring that has the second oldest scripture on earth on it that's ever been found. And he'll tell about it. I don't want to tell all this stuff, but he's going to have that ring here tonight, as well as a number of other artifacts, some of which I've seen and most of which I probably have not seen. But he's going to be here with us tonight at 6 o'clock. Bring your friends. All right. Another thing. Yesterday, Brother Danny Jones flew in on Friday afternoon. I picked him up at the airport, brought him to the house. Then yesterday, we drove down together to Henderson to Brother Ray Brooks' 100th birthday party. And he's been the president of Texas Baptist Institute for some 50-some-odd years. About, I think, around 55. Anyway, he's stepping down, but he had his 100th birthday party. They were hoping to raise for every year $1,000, raise an extra $100,000 for projects they got going at the school. And so we donated $1,000 to that goal. And to everybody's total surprise at the meeting, they announced as of yesterday with the offering that came in, there is $247,000 been raised. And their campaign goes through June, so they anticipate well over $250,000 to upgrade the school. Now, the school has just gotten full accreditation from accrediting agency, and they have not had that in the past because their goal was to train pastors, and they felt the need, well, maybe we ought to go ahead and get it accredited. And so there's several really good things coming out of this. Do y'all know that if you go to Greenville High School, the last 2 years of high school, you can take college courses, get credit? And it's entirely possible to graduate high school and get your 2-year associate's degree at the same deal. They're going to do that at the high school. They do that. And that's neat, isn't it? What about the poor homeschool kids? TBI now will be able to take credits for the last 2 years of homeschool studies and give an associate's in a degree from homeschool students, just like the high school does. So now their student body is fixing to explode with the homeschoolers that's never been, our Christian schools as well, and that's never had access and privilege to that. So now it's fixing to explode in the number of students that they're going to be reaching. And so they're going to be reaching these students 2 years before they get out in the secular world and get them grounded before they get out into the secular world. So that is going to prove to be a really great, good deal for the school. Okay. Now you say, well, they weren't accredited before. Well, Harvard's not accredited. Did y'all know that? They are not an accredited school. Harvard, what's the other one? Yale. They're not neither accredited. And they'll shrug their shoulders and say, why should we be accredited? We set the standard. So maybe so. But anyway. So those are the things that are going on. Now today would be the day for a business meeting, and we're going to do that in the morning. But because the only thing that needs to be done is the just reading of the financial report and the clerk's report, and they're not ready today. So you had something, Brother Roy? No, okay. All right. So maybe take care of that next week. That's not going to be any real important business has to be discussed. Now, tomorrow morning, Brother Danny Jones and I are going to leave early, drive down to Katy, Texas for lunch. That's down west of Houston. We're meeting with Dr. Scott Stripling, world-renowned scholar and archaeologist who lives there. And we're meeting with him for lunch, and he's going to review these artifacts, these rings from King Tut's tomb and so on, and some items that I have that are very significant. And then we're going to drive over to San Antonio, from there to Del Rio, and then Tuesday after lunch, about lunchtime, we'll be in Del Rio. And then Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, we each speak at the seminary in Acuna, return home on Friday to wash up, clean up, and get ready to leave the following Monday for Tel Aviv, Israel. So we got a lot going on, don't we? And boy, I'm glad I'm retired with all that going on. Anyway, 2 weeks from today, you're going to have I understand Brother Nathan Simmons is going to be here. He'll be here in view of a call to be considered to be pastor. So y'all just need to know that he's going to be here. John chapter 4. And really the message has to begin with verse 5. But if you'll bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and start with verse 1, and then I'll let you know when I'm at verse 5. It says, when therefore the Lord knew how the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself baptized not, but his disciples. By the way, you ever wonder why didn't Jesus do any baptism? People be up there in heaven running around all over the place. I was baptized by Jesus. You know how we are, don't you? So he didn't baptize, but he had his disciples to do the baptizing. He left Judea in verse 3 and departed again into Galilee. Verse 4, and he must needs go through Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journeys, sat down on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. And there cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water, and Jesus said unto her, Give me drink. For his disciples were gone away into the city to buy meat. Then said the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knewest the gift of God, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked of him that he would give thee living water. The woman said unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. All right, here we got them water. Did you go get that out of Jacob's well? I've drank water out of Jacob's well. I've only been there one time in all my trips to Israel. That's in the northern central part of the country, which is controlled almost solely by Arabs. And it is not a place where you would go as an American and wave an American flag. Okay, if you got suicide wishes, you could do that. Okay, there are some places in that part of the country you don't go. Okay, but they got a great big fence around it. Today they have a big fence around it, and that protects the people. But then a report came out within the last month and a half, of the safest places for tourists to go in the world. Israel's number 5. America's number 30. Okay, so if you ever wonder, is it safe to go to Israel? It is if you can just get out of the country. I was on a trip one time, and we flew from here to Chicago to Israel, and I got up in Chicago, nothing to do, had a long layover, and I posted on Facebook that I'm going to Israel, but I'm going through some very bad areas. But I'll probably be safe if I stay in the airport of Chicago. And anyway, it's safe over there, except some places they're not. However, one trip, one time, everything was smooth enough. We felt like we could go right down through the middle of that West Bank. And we stopped and got us a drink out of Jacob's well. And I'm thinking about that. And Kelly, your mother, was with us on that trip. And the well is about 8 feet in diameter. Now they put up a concrete barrier around it at the top that's a good 3.5 feet high, so you don't fall in. Kids don't lean over and fall. And it's about 100 feet deep. Dug in solid rock. So we had to drop that bucket, and we pulled the bucket up, and there was one dipper. Now, when you were growing up, kids, you only had one dipper, didn't you? Drink that water out of the well, just one dipper. And we all got us, you had to drink the water from Jacob's well, didn't you? If you were there. So we just took that dipper and we all drank us a water out of that same dipper. And nobody died. Contrary to what some think, nobody died. And Kelly's mom was a nurse, so I thought, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And we had a good time there at Jacob's Well. And now, since we were there, they've come along and built this big old church on top of it. And you still go in there and get you a drink, but it's a traditional site over there, and everything's churches. And we used to go to those, but no more. We don't go all of those anymore. But we would like to go back to Jacob's Well sometime, but it would have to be at a time when we know that it's totally safe for the people to go there. And there have been times you could go there if you had a bulletproof bus, but we just didn't want to think we had to go there if we think we needed a bulletproof bus, okay? So we've never been back there again, but I'd like to go back one day and see that place again. So Jesus and his disciples were in Jerusalem, and they were going to go back north to Galilee. And he said, I must needs go to Samaria. And I did a study one time on the footsteps of Jesus and the life of Christ. And I studied the places that he went, where he was, and the time of the year that he was there. And let's just suppose our building is a map of Israel, and this is Jerusalem, and that's Galilee down there. And right on this wall over here is the Jordan River. In the winter time, and I discovered this. I made the discovery that in the time of the year, in the winter time, they went down over to the Jordan River and went up. That's a much lower elevation, and it's a lot warmer. And this way is a mountain range. It runs right north and south in the middle of the land. And in the summertime, they would take that route because it's cooler. Now, it is a lot more up and down and hills to climb and a lot more rugged. And it was almost easier to just go downhill and then go along the Jordan River, which is pretty flat, and then up to Galilee that way. But this time, Jesus was going to go right through the middle of the country. And they oftentimes, if they would avoid that if they could. If there's any way they could go around it, because they didn't like the Samaritans. The Samaritans were there. Now, the Samaritans way back many years before, about 600 years before almost, when Babylon came in and destroyed the land and destroyed the temple in 586 BC, and they took all the young men and took them captive to Babylon. The people that remained in the land, the Jewish people, there were some of them that escaped to the hills, to the caves and hid, and that stayed in the land, and they began to mix with the Gentiles who moved in and took up free housing. And so these mixture of Jews and Gentiles were called Samaritans. And the Samaritans, when they came back to build the next temple in Jerusalem, the Samaritan people opposed it. And they objected to it and made false accusations about Nehemiah and Zerubbabel and those guys and Ezra that were rebuilding the city and the walls and etc. And they opposed it. So the Samaritans were always enemies to the Jews, because one thing, they had Gentile blood, and the second thing, they had just been in the past enemies to the Jewish people trying to rebuild the temple. There was animosity between them. There was prejudice. There was hatred, disdain for one another. And the only thing in the world that the Jews had in common with the Samaritans is that the Jews didn't like the Samaritans and the Samaritans didn't like the Jews. I mean, that's the only thing they could agree on. You don't like us and we don't like you. And that was the only thing they had harmony between them. And it never really got resolved. Remember the story of the fellow that on the road to Jericho that fell among the thieves, and the priest walked by on the other side, and the Levite walked by on the other side, and then here come a Samaritan, and the Samaritan showed kindness that was unusual to the Jewish man to bind up his wounds and to take care of him. Jesus is going to go through Samaria. He had to go through Samaria because Jesus knows everything. Whatever you're thinking in your mind right now, he knows it. Matter of fact, he knows what you're going to have for dinner today, and you haven't even decided where you're going. He knows everything. And so Jesus knew there's going to be a woman to come to the well, and she's going to draw water, and he's going to be there, and he's going to talk with that woman. And if we read the rest of it, for the length of time I didn't, if we read the rest of it, we would have discovered that he knew that she's going to drink of that living water. But she's not only going to drink, she's going to go back and tell everybody in town and bring them out. And they're going to have a revival, and he stays several days. And a lot of people are saved. And following that, we will discover that a church was established in Samaria. Did not mention much, but there was a church established in the Samaritan area. Now, we talk about the case of the woman drinking from the well, and we usually preach about the woman. We could preach about those honorary disciples, couldn't we? You know, Jesus sent them into town to get meat. Did they tell anybody? Did they have a campaign? They didn't do it. They just came back. They were hungry. They didn't do anything. And it was the woman that's the hero of the story because she led a whole town to the Lord or introduced them to the Lord. But not many people talk about that well. I want to talk about the well, Jacob's well, that Jesus drank water from. Jacob's well had been there for almost 2,000 years at the time Jesus was there. Jacob's well is still furnishing good, fresh water after 4,000 years of building it. I don't know of many wells that's still 4,000 years old that they're drinking water from. It's a famous well. And so most of the time we don't think anything we do is going to last much beyond our lifetime. But in this case, the work that Jacob did, his memory is remembered by a well that he dug that is now 4,000 years old. Now, it was quite a well. And so he wasn't slothful or careless or lazy. It was built under great difficulty, even with today's equipment to build a well 8 feet in diameter, 100 feet deep. Now, he could have taken his animals down to the nearest creek or to another spring of water somewhere else. But he wanted that spot to be used. And he needed a well. So he dug the well. And 4,000 years later, that well is still furnishing water to the people who drink out of it. Don't you know that he had witnesses to come by digging a well in solid rock? How deep are you going to dig that thing before you think you find water? You're digging in solid rock. Are you crazy? There's no water down there in that solid rock. But he knew that somewhere if you dig long enough and deep enough, you'd get below that rock, and then there's going to be water. And you know that's true. Well drillers know that when you find rock, if you get through that rock, you're going to hit water. And so Jacob just kept digging solid rock till he got down 100 feet, and he broke through into an artesian spring, and it's furnished water for all these many hundreds and thousands of years. There are others that were in the area were like nomads. They would move to an area, eat up all the green grass, drink all the water, then go somewhere else. But you see, not only did he want and have need of the water, he provided water for himself and 1,000 generations to follow. So he did a great work to what he had done that was a long-lasting work. His work has been a blessing to thousands of people for thousands of years. It was dug 4,000 years ago, and since the time of Christ, 2,000 years have passed, and we still drink water from that well. So the Samaritan woman reflected many hundreds of generations of people that was enjoying the benefits of the hard work of Jacob. Now, I think we could probably be a good lesson for our younger generation today. Our teenagers, our college students today need to learn what hard work is. They don't have a clue really about what hard work is like. And so if you want to build and build good and build right, it takes a lot of hard work. And such is a godly life. If we want to do something that's going to last, we got to do it, and we got to do it right, and we've got to do it with hard work. You know, Jacob himself was not without reward, because he had the satisfaction of doing a good job. There's just something about doing something and doing it right. Just, you know, when we build something and we have something, we're proud of our effort, and when we accomplish something that's good, we're proud of it. And it does something to our attitude, our mind, our well-being, our mental health, well-being, to do something and do it right. Do it good. Just makes you feel good when you've accomplished something that is worthwhile. And so Jacob had his own reward because he knew that he had done something well. And whether or not he knew it was going to last 4,000 years or not, I don't know. But he built it to last. Now, the work of Jacob brought comfort to the Lord Jesus. Not only did the Bedouins use it, not only did the people in the community use it, not only did the woman of Samaria use it, not only all of that, but Jesus himself was refreshed from the work that he had done. What a blessing he was even to the life of the Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus made very practical use of it. He rested on the curb, it said in verse 6 and 7, and he sat there on the curb, and there he asked the Samaritan lady for a drink. Now, she was shocked that a Jewish man, an Israeli, would ask her for a drink of water, because most Israelis would go starve before they would ask a Gentile to give them a drink of water. Caught her by surprise. Why would you as a Jew ask me for a drink of water? I know how you feel about us. But Jesus told her, if you knew who was asking, you'd ask me for the water of life. And turned that into a pulpit, didn't he? The surrounding area of the well turned into a pulpit for Jesus to preach. Jesus makes it clear that he derives comfort from every good work, and that even when we bless others, we bless him. He said, you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me. And folk, when you do somebody a good deed, and you do offer your help to somebody else, and you have a kind word, and you have an act of kindness to somebody else, Jesus takes that personal. You're doing it for him. You know what? Of all of the 10 commandments, the first 4 of them have to do with our relationship and our treatment of Jesus, and the last 6 has to do with our relationship to each other. If we sin against each other, we sin against God. If we violate other people's rights, we sin against God. And when we bless other people, we bless God. We're doing it. Think of it as we're doing it to God, and we're not doing it, this is altogether for somebody else, but we're doing it for the Lord. because he is that human representative that we are given opportunity to do something good for. Mark 9 and verse 41, for whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because ye belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. What about that? A cup of water in the Lord's name, and you'll not. There's going to be a reward for that. He says in Matthew 25 verse 40, in as much as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it to me. Go out and find somebody you can do good to. Okay? Give them a kind word. I don't know where you're going to go eat today, but give your waitress a kind word. After all, they couldn't come to church today because they got to work. So the least we can do is give them a kind word, isn't it, when we go out? And so there's a reward that's based on our doing a good job and doing it right and being a blessing to others. Scripture says, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. That comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 15. You know, at the close of his life, Jacob never did go back to the wells he had dug or to the fortune that he had accumulated. Near the end of his life, he never went back to all those places and revisited them. But he did go back to Bethel. Jacob was traveling from South Israel up to Haran, and that's the story. And one night he stopped at a place called Luz. And during the night, God met him. And he was a trickster. He didn't display Christian generosity, but he met God. And it said that the pillow, he took a rock and made a pillow of it out at Bethel and used it to probably put stuff on to make him a pillow. And the next morning he used that rock as a pillar, an altar. And God changed his life at Bethel. Bethel is not very far from the well that he dug. But he didn't go back there. He went to Bethel. You remember that place where you were when you were saved? Old house I was in that night been torn down. Should have been torn down before I moved in it, but my parents moved in there. But it's been long torn down. And every time I go back to Whitney on Highway 22 on this side of town, you know where the old wrecking yard used to be? Well, there's an old house there on the east side, and that we lived in. Every time I go back down that road, I look for that old house. I know it's not there, but it was there. I was saved. Special place. We need to go back to that place every once in a while and then live our lives to benefit other people and make their lives better and do a job and do it good and lasting, that other people can get a blessing from the life that we live. Let's have an invitation.